This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So,
Hey,
how is everyone?
good.
So, Chris, how does that format? Okay. Yeah. So there's Chris Myers, and then there's Loco. Oh, you even put Loco on there. Never mind. Self-explanatory. So, Chris, what was the format of the meetings? Introduction, and then how many minutes? 15 minutes or so for whatever the topic is, and then some open table, round table
Sure.
stuff. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, whatever needs to
Okay.
be.
Yeah, and it looks like every single person on here has already been here before, so we can go through it and I won't feel too stupid. So we're going to try to stick to a little format. I've got the calendar set up. It's on the in the portal on in our knowledge base on the webinar page. And there's nothing on it right now, but I have the shared calendar made so that when we have special guests or whatnot, we'll be able to look there and see what they are. I'll try to make that go over on Facebook as well in the Facebook events, but I'm not a social media manager. I help people fix their lasers. So I'll do the best I can with that part, but that's something else that we're looking for as well. So on that topic, if anyone ever has a suggestion on maybe someone, an option for one of those people, I have a form made for that as well. And I think it's linked on the thing. I guess I should probably link that, right? So you guys can see it. But I was thinking about, and maybe not right away because I think we need to do some testing first, but like at some point I'd like to get Enduramark or Brilliance or someplace like that, maybe to talk about not so much to sell their product, but more, I mean, of course you'd see their presence, but to talk about the marking compounds. And I think one of the things that's not touched on, and I'm going to email all of them and ask them if they want to participate, is Chinese laser settings. All the settings that you see from Brilliance and Enduramark and Ceramark and all of those other ones, those Heaves inks, and even JDS on the two color board and on all of those settings that they have, 99% of those are for the ULS, Trotec, Epilogue. They have the proprietary controllers. They talk about percentages for speed and power, and we really don't know what those are, you know. So it's apples to oranges. And I would like to see, since this community is so big, the Chinese lasers is so big, I think they should expand their settings. And if we can help facilitate that, that would be a neat way to form an alliance with them. So that's one of my thoughts. I was going to talk about that with like the service guys first, but since they're both on here, I figured I'd just blurt it out and we could talk about it.
Yeah, and maybe Brilliance or Laser Bond, one of them could, throw in a can, a spray, and get that to one of the users.
So I don't
Well,
remember the guy's name from Laser Bond, but when I owned Lataza, I dealt with him quite often, and he was a cool guy, man. I can talk to him for hours, and he would tell me about the chemical formulas and how it all started. So he may be a really good guy to get on here. I can reach out to him.
Kind of what my thinking is hey, if you send me some products to test with, and Chris Loco, you may be the perfect guy for this because you like getting in there, dialing in settings, and you're awfully good at it and all that. But whatever the case, we can develop a set of settings, but we need to pass them out to some other people and have them do it. We need one for every wattage for these materials. You see what I mean? So if we could approach it that way, then we could submit that information to them, and maybe they could publish it on their site. Yeah, I've got Enduramark and I've got Brilliance. I got rattle cans of both and the powder. I think we should stick to rattle cans for testing, even though
Do the powder
the
too.
hmm?
Do the powder too if you can.
Well, see, we can make a separate thing about the powder because it is a more efficient way to do it. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it should behave the same way because all of the vehicle evaporates anyway. So
Well, it should, but if you're using an airbrush or something to put it on, depending on your setup of your airbrush, you might get a completely different thickness of coat,
yeah,
depending on how much air you're putting through, if you're, thinning it properly. And there's all kinds of
sure.
variables that would
Yeah.
be
Well, that's
great
one.
to
Well, that's one reason
test
that I
out.
don't want to put that into the initial testing. I'd rather
Yeah.
get some rattle can 60 watt, 80
When
watt,
you,
100 watt, 130 watt baselines and be done with it.
when,
And,
yeah,
and then
when
we
you
can
get
dial
ready
that
to
other
test the
stuff in.
powder, Brian, let me know because I've got several different airbrushes that I can test it through.
Okay.
So I paint
All right.
miniatures.
Okay. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we can definitely reach out about that. About the best practices for all of
Yeah.
that, thinning it and
Yeah.
getting it the right consistency and stuff. But yeah, and definitely that can come off of it. But that's just kind of where my brain's going. So,
Sounds good.
well, anybody have anything? If there's anybody new on here, anybody wants to reintroduce themselves, I'm Brian. I'm still working on this platform. So, trying to see if I have the form on here. No, I haven't published the
Thomas
form.
showed up.
So, anyway, if anybody's got anything, like I said, feel free to jump out there and spit it out. We'll be glad to talk about it. Jason, how you doing over there, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Just wrapping up with a customer here real quick, and then I'll be able to partake.
Okay, no worries.
He got ate by a gator.
Well, he's awfully calm to have that happen.
Oh, did you hear the latest
Hey,
news?
Brian, I got a question.
Okay. What you
Talking
got?
to Jim or me? Hey, so
you.
silly question. I got a vicious rumor that went through me through a buddy of mine. The laser tubes.
Okay.
And Jim knows where this one's going. Are the tubes in cold storage before they're sent? They're shipped to say me if you know anything or have heard anything about tubes being in cold storage, being and then having what, a week or 2 weeks at the most before they have to be energized or the tube is worthless?
That sounds like that would be a manufacturing and logistics and warehousing nightmare. I don't know that that's true. I can't deny it, but all the tubes I've ever seen are just, they don't have them sitting out in the sun, but they're just in I would venture to say it's not even conditioned. I can ask with Light Object here and see how they ship or how they store their tubes. I'm pretty sure in China they just stack them in the warehouse. It's comfortable enough to work in there. So I'm sure the temperature is somewhat regulated. But
No,
I don't
we're
think
talking
they.
about being
I know you're talking about refrigerating them or whatever, right?
or putting them in a freezer. My buddy has one of the off brands that we do not name, the same as mine, and or the other brand, I should say. And he was told he wanted to order a spare tube. He was told, no, don't do it because they have to be kept in a cold storage, or within
That's
2 weeks
crap.
they have to be energized. Okay,
Nah.
that's what I thought.
I have one
I've
question.
never heard
Are these
that.
tubes primarily manufactured overseas?
Yes. All of
So
the
how
glass tubes are.
Okay, so how would they even make it across the boat in 1 week in cold storage when you know that those are not in cold? Well, I guess they are refrigerated boats that do come across the
They-
food.
They
It
bring
takes over a
food.
week to get from LA to your location. 2
Yeah,
weeks, 3 weeks.
It's. I sort of found it
Yeah.
laughable when he asked me that.
Well,
'cause I was
Yeah,
going,
plus,
"What
how
the
many
hell?"
people bought a used machine that sat for how many years and it turns right on and the tube.
Well, he's saying before they're energized. That was what I told Tommy, and he's like, "Well, they're saying before it's energized. It's like so that the
Why
tube's
would
not
that
even
matter?
plugged in."
You
Yeah,
think the tube manufacturer didn't test them? They've already been energized once, I guarantee you. So that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And
it
all I
doesn't.
say is this is why we have a Thunder. We will sell the other brand when we can and buy another Thunder.
Yep.
Yeah. Is
I-
this the
my
same?
two more.
Is this the same company that in one of the blurbs it says that they have all these accessories because a lot of companies like to gouge you on the prices and they sell their chiller that we sell for $500 for like $1,000 or $899 or something.
That I don't know, but I know that when you go to hook up an air cylinder or an air solenoid so that you can do the same thing that the Thunder does, the original directions were wrong and fried. I'm gonna say it incorrectly. Is it an RCF or RFC? One of the boards in it that would hold that has 24-volt power to supply the air solenoid.
That's possible. A power supply could have blown, or it could have actually, I guess, blown the controller or at least blown one of the IOs, because I think they're all optically isolated, all the IOs on the controller. But that would cease.
I don't know. He's down a circuit board in it Now, fortunately, he can still function. He doesn't require it to do what he's doing, but he tried to retrofit his similar to y'all's.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, he's that's $900 for him.
Ooh.
Yikes.
Maybe you should just buy your laser, and then he'd have spare parts.
If I have my way, he will. Then I can buy another Thunder.
I got a 35-100 with your name on it, Tommy.
I need it. I need an 80.
That's easy to do. Very easy to do.
That's what the boss wants is a 3580. That's what will fit. So that's what she gets.
Yeah. Well, the 100 and the 80 are identical except for the tube and the extension on the tube. They have the same power supply and everything in them.
I think that's their problem is the extension, the room that they got.
Yeah. That extension
That
goes
is-
One had a-
off.
We would be
Where are you at,
replacing-
Tommy?
We're in outside of outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
I saw someone had a 3-month-old 3580 somewhere in Alabama for sale.
Yeah.
Outside of Birmingham, we looked at it. If a buddy of mine was coming up like he was supposed to have been, we would have probably made an offer and had him pick it up on the way up here.
I can probably get you an 82.
I'm sure you can, Chris.
No,
Yeah,
like
he's
it's
the-
a pretty good deal.
He's the Fred Sanford of the Thunder Lasers now. We're working on something with the pilot program. Would you like to explain since you're the one over there sweating over it?
Oof, yes, wedding, definitely. No, we've got a bunch of machines that are going through refurbishment. So these are ones that were not handled properly, I guess, by the freight companies.
Dropped off the back of a truck.
Yeah, those kind of things. Hey, let's stick a 5,000-pound crate on top of something that says 200 kilograms, please. So they were visually damaged, so we can replace those parts, refurb them. They still maintain full warranty and all that, but they come at a discount, right? So just like anything refurbished, or maybe some visual things, but from a functionality, same exact thing.
We'll stand behind them.
I'm going to say you're checking them, right? And running them to make
Yeah.
sure that they still run and function.
Yeah, they're going to be
He's-
powered
he's
up,
rebuilding
moved
them.
around.
Yeah.
So, like I said,
okay.
and I'm not
I'm
far
interested-
from you, Tommy. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, so it's not a far ride.
So
No,
it's a
it's
scratch
not.
and dent aisle, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opposed to scratch and dent. That's how I like to buy all my appliances.
Look who you married, obviously.
Yeah, the camera's going to go off for a minute.
Yeah, what do you've got our email, don't you, Chris? Or do you want me to send it to you? Or
Yeah, you can just send it over. A lot of this will go through Grant anyway, but yeah, if you're interested, we've got one. Just bring a trailer, and we can work with you.
I got a trailer big enough for two of them. Don't tempt me.
Room.
Don't forget you still gotta get that fiber.
You got a
Fiber.
63 over there, right, Chris?
Yeah, a 63, a bunch of 51s, and then a Nova 35.
Got any Odins?
No Odins, no. Fortunately,
Those don't
knock
get
on wood,
damaged too
yeah.
bad.
So nobody
They're
set
pretty-
a 51 on top of an Odin or anything like that yet?
Yeah. No. Well, and the other thing is just the population. The Nova is probably 20 or 25 to 1 over the Odins, as far as population goes. So the damage is going to be higher just because of numbers,
Yeah, so I used Odin. I think it was in New Jersey, but it's a long way to drive.
The Odin's a fantastic machine, though. The Odin, what is it, 32 with that 55 watts, got to be a fantastic one. I love my 22 with that 30 watt.
It's hotter than 30. It feels hotter than 30, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Well, that tiny little beam spot, the detail, the speed, the consistency. It's a great little machine. I love running it. I've done some pictures where my buddy, he helped me with the converting the picture to something gravable versus his Note 51, and just the time savings and the quality output was just fantastic. So
Speaking of hot, has anybody else seen the video that somebody used a fiber to brand themselves through a tattoo?
No, I've seen the CO2 gantry one, but not
No.
a fiber galvo.
They had
Yeah,
almost
so-
a sleeves part tattoo on the lower part of their arm. It actually removed the tattoo completely. It looked pretty badass, and I sent the video to Travis since he's the one that's always up to trying shit, and he chickened out on it. I said, "Come on, dude, let's do a video on this," and he was like, "No."
Does he have a tat? Because we could make a tattoo gun and send it to him as well.
Well, I tried to talk him into it. I was asking if he had employees that he hated, and he said my wife wouldn't appreciate that. Ooh.
They need to keep their help.
I don't
Yeah,
think
he needs to keep his help.
I don't think he meant his help. He was talking about his wife. The way it was worded, I had to stop. I was sitting there laughing. I'm going, I wonder exactly how he meant that.
Yeah, that could be derived a couple of ways. So,
I
but
do have
anyway,
a question, actually.
Yep.
On the pressure monitors, sensors, regulators, readouts,
Mhm.
how many people are actually using the digital over the glycerin filled?
Well, I don't know.
Are they worth going to use?
Yes,
Okay.
that digital one
digital
is the resolution is way higher. You can see what you're sometimes when you're engraving, especially if you use a wide orifice nozzle, depending on the flow out, you may be approaching almost zero pressure, because if you have a 4 millimeter inside diameter airline and your nozzle's got a 6 millimeter hole in it, you're going to be working hard to fill that all the way up anyway. There's not going to be a lot of back pressure. So you're not going to see there's flow, but there's not actual pressure buildup. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the digital's able to still pick that
The
up.
digital can pick up those higher resolution. Yeah.
Okay.
And the digital gives you the repeatability down to a decimal place, right?
That's sort of where I was
what
at.
I'll tell you is the digital is not accurate, right? It doesn't give you a real representation of the pressure because it's an open-ended, right? So if it says 22.5 psi, it's not 22.5 psi. But when it says 22.5 psi, I get this result. I can dial it to 30, I can dial it to 15, I can put it back at 22.5, and it's the same.
Yeah.
Right?
That's sort of where I was at with
it gives you a setting that you can duplicate.
Yeah.
So is everybody pretty much, when they're mounting those, I keep looking at Loco's. I think he has gone Loco. He's just holding a piece of cardboard behind his head.
I'm trying to be like Jim.
Oh, God, don't do that.
You have to turn
That's
it
the wrong
around
thing
backwards.
to do.
Hold on.
Because I keep looking. It's basically everybody mounting those is because I was trying to look at the CAD drawing and then the other drawing of those. Are they just drilling a larger hole than? Because I know it's basically a 4 mil tube. Are they just drilling a larger hole that is the size of the back of the whole mechanism for the wire and everything, and then just adhering them to the top of the laser?
It depends. They're made to be panel mounted, but you'd have to cut out a square hole or build some sort of bezel or something around it, or 3D print something. You can flush mount it if you want to. I drilled my hole enough where that the air fitting would screw through
That's
and
what I was
actually
meaning.
thread into there. And
So it's
then
probably
there's
a 3/8. It's probably a
it's a
3/8 or
step
half-inch hole.
on the back of it. There's a mounting hole, and then there's a smaller or a mounting thread on that brass, and then it necks down and goes to a smaller diameter where you actually connect your fitting for your airline.
But what about the
If
wire?
I'm not mistaken, the wire I drilled a separate hole just below
Okay.
the other hole.
Because I was getting
And
ready to
just
order
be careful
one. and I
because there's a lot of stuff under the hood right there where at least where mine's mounted.
Yes,
I'm going to go to the left of the whole Mac because there's a clear spot. If
Now
you go
the
to
other
left
option
of
would
the
be to
Mac-
mount it on the inside, on the left-hand side, out of
yeah,
the
but
way.
I don't want to
You
reach
don't even,
inside. That's a pain in the butt. I don't want to...
well, you don't have to reach once you get it connected, unless you want to
Yeah,
change
but I
a
mean,
set point
it's
and actually
read.
have it.
I guess, yeah, being inside really wouldn't that be a deal because if you're just changing it here and there, it's not that big of a deal just to have it mounted
Just
down at the
look
bottom
under there and
corner.
watch it if you didn't want to drill a bunch of holes. But you have to watch out for that gantry and make sure that none of those mechanisms will hit any of your peripheral plumbing and attachments.
That's one of the reasons why I was thinking about going to the complete left of the valves or that whole plate right there because there's literally nothing to that
Yeah.
side of it at all. And you'd be up against almost the outside wall at that
Yeah,
point in time.
exactly. Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I drilled mine just above the solenoid plate with the buttons and the lights there.
Solenoid plate. That's what I couldn't think of the word.
Yep. So I mine's just above it, and I looked at doing like Brian was going to do, and so I ended up drilling a hole slightly bigger where it's got the wire and the fitting through it. I cut a box, right, just a little finger jointed box to fit around it that fit real tight to it, and then got that stuck to. But so kind of made a I guess almost like a sleeve or a mounting box. It's that way it's sturdy enough. It's not flopping around up there, but it's not physically recessed in and mounted either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess really mounting them on the inside really doesn't matter that much because if you're setting that air pressure, you're
You
setting
need
it
to
and leaving
glance at
it.
it when you're. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're setting it up during your initial, and if it's sitting tucked in the back inside corner right there, out of the way, it really wouldn't matter. Besides the point that it's not a pretty little digital thing sticking out in the
But
middle of the open.
yeah, but most people wouldn't matter if you had one hole, and like he did, where you run your wire through and not actually use it as a mount for you just pass the airline and the wire through
Yeah,
just about anywhere, I guess.
yeah, I just need to get one. I've keep meaning to order it, and I keep putting it off because I was messing with some acrylic, and I know it's more sensitive with the air on acrylic, and I was just cutting it, but I'm trying to get my acrylic to.
Get that flame polished edge.
Well, it's just not that. I had blue, yellow, red. What the hell the color was I playing with? Green, and the blue's coming out really funky on the edge, and the red, the green, and the orange all looked good, but some of it's a difference between opaque and then translucent.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm doing it the right way.
I'm sure all the pigmentation and all that stuff matters too.
Yeah.
I just mostly use clear, so I don't have a lot of problem with that. I did cut some blue at one point, and I remember it stunk a whole lot worse, but I don't remember if
Is it masked when you're cutting it, Jim?
Yeah, both sides. I didn't even bother to mask it.
Well, I know some people when they cut it without it masked, some of the colors are more reflective than the other, right? Depending on how shiny versus opaque versus translucent, so it doesn't absorb the energy as well. But when it's masked, it doesn't reflect it until after it's effectively ablating it.
Yeah, the blue had a shitty looking edge to it. It's almost like I don't know, almost looked like sandpaper, like a 1,000 grit sandpaper type edge to it. Where the exact same setting for the red, the green wasn't perfect, but they were a whole hell of a lot better looking than the blue.
Mm-hmm.
And the blue actually left a blue residue on the honeycomb where the others didn't. It was weird.
The other thing I found is not all acrylic from all manufacturers are created the same, right? Just like anything else, there's differences in quality, right? There, they all have slightly different blends and how they mix in their pigments and how they manufacture it, and I found where sheets from the same manufacturer, just different sheets set up the same, just cutting duplicates of the same job, they yield different results. It's really frustrating, if you will.
Yes, thank God it was for my father-in-law, not for a customer. He can't see that well anyway, so he'll never know.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at it, though, I'm like, this looks like garbage. Do not do blue with this particular one because it just don't look good.
Fan to come on. Should we talk about that Rewire the Fan article that's public now, Chris?
Yeah, we can.
Let me put it in the actually, I can probably pull it up. I'll put it in the chat also. But let me actually, if I can pull this one up without being screen of monitor. Which one? I have to scroll. Hang on. That's
all six of them over there.
There it is. Clean screen. I think I picked it right this time. So Chris made this article on, because we've been talking about the inline axial fans and how they have to spool up, and some people want ways to make them spool up first. And we talked about starting the job with the lid open and going over and closing the lid, or drawing some art and having it set to a 0 or low power so that it does that kind of thing. I'll let him explain it. I'll put him on the spot. He wrote it.
Right. Yeah, I typed it. So basically the idea is changing the functionality of how the fan works. The old green noisy fan, when you hit the 120 to it, it ramped right up. The new ones, they do ramp up a little slower, so we changed the functionality, or I did on my machine. So what it does is it takes the chiller off of the main contactor. You hit that laser switch, you get the laser power supply and the chiller at the same time, and puts the fan there instead. So the fan comes off of the relay that's controlled by the TL timer board, goes to the main contactor, and then the chiller is fed off of the main 120. This coming through the breaker, just not with the contactor in place. So you then control the chiller by the switch that's on the front of the chiller. So if you want to just play around with the machine and not actually have it do anything, you can leave the chiller off, as you're doing job setup or whatnot. But what's great is when you want to do like a dry run, you can leave the laser switch off. Your laser's not going to fire, the fan's not going to run, but your chiller can be on, so you don't get the water protect error. And you can do dry runs like on tumblers or your wood or whatever, which some people do. Then when you're ready to run the job, you turn the laser switch on, fan ramps up, now your laser power supply is energized, ready to go, and then you can start your job. And then the fan will stay running too. It's no longer TL timer controlled. It'll stay running until you turn that second switch off. So it's just,
I got something on that with the new lasers. Like my 63 is a new one, and if you turn the laser switch off, your chiller will not power.
Right. Normally that's correct. This modification changes that.
Oh, so that changes that altogether?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, so basically it would take your chiller and feeding it instead of through the main contactor, which is driven by the laser switch, you feed it through the main breaker, bypassing the contactor. From a wiring change, there's only one wire that you remove, and then one wire you're going to clip the end off of to fit into a terminal, and that's it. Easy to revert if you ever needed to. I've got all the pictures and stuff in there. But to me, the functionality of being able to turn the fan on and have the chiller on so that I can dry run it without hitting the laser switch is pretty beneficial. So
yeah, and so what he means by dry run, just in case, is you can actually have it go through the motions without actually outputting the laser beam. Previously, you couldn't do that; it would throw an error. But wired this way, you're able to do it.
Yep.
So, but yeah, that's one way. If you want to.
Do you lose your chiller alarm though, in case
somebody?
No.
Okay.
Still functional. The main thing is the chiller is now powered up. Basically, if you plug your machine into 120 and you turn the chiller switch on, the chiller is going to run.
So, like it used to before it was integrated into the machine to begin with.
Yeah.
So if you leave the chiller on and you turn the laser off with either the red button, it kills the chiller too?
No. With this modification, when you turn the laser power switch on and off, the two items, normally the way your machine sits as wired, when you turn the laser power switch on, the chiller power is energized and the laser power supply is energized in the machine. This rewires it so that your chiller is getting power all the time. And the laser power switch now works the fan and the laser power supply. So you have the ability to turn off the laser power supply so that it won't fire without throwing an error. Because if you try to do that now, your chiller's off and it's going to give you the error. But since your chiller is being powered separately, not by that laser power switch, we can repurpose it to use for the fan.
I wonder if there's another way to power that off of the power switch, so the chiller will turn off or turn on with that power switch as well, instead of.
There's a lot of different ways we could do it, but this is probably for the end client. This is probably going to be the easiest and less invasive way to do it.
Yeah, I just know with my 60, at least with the 63, my chiller is all the way in the back because obviously the tubes are shorter. So, and there's about a 12-inch gap between what's next to it and that to get back in there to turn it on.
Yeah. Which you also got to realize there's also 3 other solutions to the fan problem besides this modification. So if somebody has a 63 and they don't want to get back there to it, they don't have to do it. So, we've got other options as well. And they're in there somewhere.
The only thing I didn't want to do with running it out of the second or the main switch is with the filtering and everything on there with their ratings and stuff. By running it off the main terminal block, which if you look at the article, it's right next to the main breaker. That means that power is still basically coming out of your main receptacle versus going through a filter, which is how it was when it was on the contactor as well. It's just no longer using
Yeah.
the contactor as part of the switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the AC power in these things is split into two circuits. One of them runs everything else, and the laser power switch is the one that runs supposedly just the chiller and the laser power supply, and they're on different legs on purpose so that that noise won't feed back into the other one. So that's another consideration when doing this kind of stuff. So, but anyway, that's just another one of the articles. We're starting to populate a bunch more articles. Chris is good at writing articles. Loco's, hey, have you written any articles yet? You know you have
Not-
to write articles.
I think I have one coming, right, Jason Roto? I
Hopefully.
might have to do one on the rotary for the fiber.
Well, I probably ought to do one for the factory rotary too, because I've got that thing in now, the chuck to do rings
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Right.
So I might play with it and then send it to one of the Chris's to help. But I
Yeah,
did the outside of a ring. I got to work
thing
on
one
that
and
stuff.
thing two, right?
Oh man, I'm thing one.
But
I'm the older one, so
yeah. But yeah, if anybody's
by
got
a
any
long
questions,
shot.
please jump in and feel free to ask. We'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, we'll just jaw about whatever we come up with. He must. Let's see. I think
I got
that's
one for
about.
Jason.
Okay.
Yeah.
The are we 100% on no more low rollers?
Not 100%. They
Okay.
they can be still purchased if people want them. It's
Okay.
just we're phasing them out.
Okay.
But yeah, we still have plenty to sell if people want to get that instead.
So, and I think
But
Grant
the
just.
low rollers is the rotary for the Aurora now, basically.
Okay.
So that's where that kind of stands right now. But aside from that, we're just basically kind of as requested, I would say.
I just had a
So-
Nova 24 user, and I was like, well, can you look at it and see if it's 59 millimeters or 42? You know, kind of gauge it, and we determined what it was. So just want to make sure.
Yeah, anything I think since, let me see here. Let's say anything since right around March or April. If they got their machine or their rotary after that, it's going to be the Junior or the Rotoboss with the drop brackets to put it into the Nova 24.
Sounds
So,
good.
what's the standard equipment? I mean, which one is being sold for the 24? Which one is the go-to on the 24 now? The Junior with the drop brackets, right?
Well, it's I get I
Or
don't know how they classify it as far as Thunder when they're
Because
telling
originally we'd have to send the low roller out with the 24, and then the Junior is what we pushed. If somebody wanted the full, then they would say, "Hey, I want the full." But you see what I mean?
Well,
I just didn't
I
know.
think at this point enough people know that everything's out there, so it's kind of
So basically, you can use any of them for any of them now.
yes.
But see, that adds a lot of
only
complexity to our side because we don't know what configuration they may have or may not have. So I guess that's what we need to come up with is
Well,
a set of revisions that we can document and know what the differences are. Are the drive wheels different sizes along that progression?
The Junior and the Rotoboss are the same and have been the same for years.
The beginning, okay.
Yeah. So even though that's in the 24 now, it doesn't change anything. So you can treat a 24 like a 53 or 51 or a 63 or a 35. It's all the same.
Yeah.
The only difference is if if they have a 24, you just want to see if they have a low roller, which is clearly identified on the roller.
Okay.
If it's not listed or showing, like, because it's engraved on the arm, the slave wheel arm. So, I mean, all you got to do is say, do you have a low roller or junior? If they say I don't know, say does the slave wheel or the non-drive wheels or whatever they want to call it, does that have low roller written on the plate? If it is, then it's a low roller. If it's not, it's a junior. So, and if that's the case, the only thing that really changes is the wheel diameter. Because the steps per rotation are still roughly the same, somewhere between 42 and 4600. Regardless of the wheel size, just the diameter is either 42 or 56. That
Okay.
makes sense.
Yep.
But moving forward, as far as that, like I said, the junior, everything's gonna be the same. So there's no, technically there's no differences, aside from just identifying which roller they have if need be for whatever reason.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just checking the tickets for a minute. So, hey, Grant, I see you got your mic on. Does that mean you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, carry on.
I'll say something if y'all got a question.
I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Hey, do you refrigerate your tubes?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they're all just sitting over here in the fridge.
Got to keep it on tap.
His cold heart. They're right behind him.
I know Chris down there. He's got to be hot in that metal building with no insulation or AC.
Yeah, it's hot as hell right now.
I've been there, done that.
It's like
You need to get a couple of those big, huge ceiling fans. Those low moving, really slow, huge moving ceiling fans.
Big ass fans.
That don't help. That don't help down here in Florida.
No. Up and go
Not
go
at
on with the
all.
mini split.
The biggest issue you got to worry about is humidity, especially when you're running those machines drawing all that air in. I had an issue with that where condensation was forming on the machines.
I haven't had that issue yet, thank God.
We had a ticket come in this morning on that on condensate building up in the machines in Florida, as a matter of fact. So
you got to make sure that your dew point and your refrigeration levels are in balance, so you don't get the condensation. Right?
This guy hadn't even plugged his machine
cold.
in yet. This guy hadn't even hooked his machine up yet. He just had it sitting and had the exhaust connected, and the difference between that hot humid in the exhaust and the internal air inside his shop was enough to make the condensate. He hadn't even turned on the chiller. It was like in the machine, like dripping off the glass and everything on the inside of the machine.
Where it's worse is at night. When you go into the night and you go into the next day, that's when you see, or when I saw the most condensation buildup, because even though if you got a damper or something on your outflow, that air can still seep through and it's going to go straight to your machine, and that's where I got all my issues. But I got I think it's a 2,400 square foot dehumidifier. I mean, they're like $150, and I leave it run all the time, and I keep the humidity down to about 50. And that's even in the summer. Things just constantly working. But I haven't had any problems in my home shop since then.
Yeah, I told him to put a blast gate on it and leave the lid up. It would equalize. At least when he's not using it. And then when you're using it, maybe you'll be using it enough where you're running your fan, and kind of keep all it.
That's like, I saw somebody they had a Glowforge. They put one of those, what Chris has got there, the little portable AC units, and that causes a lot of condensation too, and plus it'll work its butt off and it won't do you much any good because your laser's drawing air out of the building as well as the air conditioner's drawing air out and sucking hot humid air in or wherever you're at. So I mean, putting the cart in front of the horse on those.
Sorry, I was answering a ticket. Well, so what do you want to talk about? It was too short a notice. I just barely got the calendar up, so I don't have anybody lined up yet.
New Lightburn?
New Lightburn, Galvo Lightburn.
Yeah.
It's coming. I didn't actually see the date. I get to
June
ignore all that
30th.
stuff because I still saw it because I get to use it already.
Yeah. So June 30, it's being released. Anyone that's got an active, we'll say license, right, that's paid for, that's not outside of the year, that gets the updates, they get it free for I think 15 days, starting July 15th. You either pay to upgrade it or buy a license with it.
Best thing since sliced bread.
It's good stuff. It's really good stuff.
Question.
And
Somebody just emailed me and asked if we have a cleaning manual or something for the old exhaust fan.
we
I can't
do.
find anything online on like
it's
just
in there.
Google.
It's if you have to search in our portal, look for cleaning the exhaust fan.
I was going to say if you look for AC Infinity, right, you clean it to one of those.
I see.
If you type in clean, you'll see cleaning your stock exhaust fan, and it's just a picture of that one.
Yeah.
But it's just like 4 screws. You just take the cover off. So I mean, if it takes more than a picture, then we probably need to have some remedial classes anyway. And then there's one for the newer style inline fans also.
Okay.
You want me
I'm not
to
sure how to
link
take
it?
that comment.
No, I got it.
Did you? Okay.
Yep.
I'll put it on there.
How many people have been using the new Lightburn or the beta version and know the differences that are coming down the pike?
I have.
Yeah, I have a little bit. I'll tell you what, I can do pictures on Lightburn on a fiber, and I can't do pictures on anything else, if that tells you anything.
Easily. Yeah, I'm at the point where, like, trying to help people that post something online, they're like, how do you do this? And you go, look, oh, hold on. Now, is that in the actual release version, or is that somewhere in between one of the beta versions? So I'll be glad when it's released. So now I know that, everyone's at least has access to the same one. Because like, well, mine doesn't have. I was like, but I thought that got released in the new one. I know it was developed in the beta, but I thought it got rolled out already. Sorry.
I really think we're down to just the multi-layer or multi-sub layer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only thing that's going to come out with the new release besides the support for Galvo.
Yeah, and that's very useful when you go in, and I always double checks. Like I go into my material parameters and stuff, and I can't remember if I applied it to the layer, so I go double check. But you can look on your layers where it's, you've applied it, and it shows that it's linked there, and then you can go into the sub layer, especially on the fiber, where you do something at the same speed and settings, but you do like a wider than a narrower hatch on it.
Right, a 45 degree or 90 degree.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that, or even if you're doing it where like I'll do like a 0.2 and then a 0.02 or a 0.01, I do leatherette with a 2-pass, kind of a rough pass and then a fine pass, and it works a lot better on the leatherette like that. And yeah, previously you just duplicate the design as Control D and then just change the layer to a different setting rather than now it's the same layer with just multiple passes at different parameters.
Yeah, a lot of neat stuff.
See if I can share my screen.
You should be able to.
I should be able to share my screen as well. Oh no, it wants me to restart. I don't want to restart.
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
New guys.
Let's show you how the multi sub layers work and how to add them. I think the hardest part for us on the sports side will be everything switching over from fill line, and people are going to be like, "Where the hell did it go?"
Yeah, fill and align, 2 separate layers, but it's a lot easier to keep the settings.
Yep.
Correct, right?
It's just going to be a learning curve.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed with it is you got to be careful, and maybe it's just me because I don't know what I'm doing. But when you switch between, because I have like 5 different lasers on my Lightburn, and when you switch from them, the settings, like say if I'm using the fiber,
Yep.
and then I
Get in there.
open up another tab for the CO2, it'll keep the last known settings, so it'll run like if I had my fiber running at 6,000 at 60% or whatever, when I open up the new laser, it has those same settings in it, and it also has like a crosshatch and whatever I'm using for the fiber. So they got to make sure that they're checking those settings
Yeah, and I
when they
talked
do
to them
that.
about that because, I mean,
And
you're not going to run a 45-degree angle on your CO2.
yeah.
Well, you can,
Well, no,
but it's not like it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
talked to them about it during obviously during the beta and stuff, and they said that there's a button on the device settings that you click, and it doesn't allow it to do that. It keeps basically the stock settings, but no matter which way you do it, whatever the stock settings are, you're gonna have to make sure if it's the stock settings for fiber or stock settings for CO2 when you switch between them. You're gonna have to make sure that you check those, because I did that before, and my CO2 started doing cross hatching. so that was pretty interesting. But
yeah, it'll be a
that's
hell of a learning curve, but by far everything is going to be 10 times better than EasyCAD. So
way better. I've not used EasyCAD since before
no.
Christmas. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a learning curve. It's gonna be well worth it.
And from our aspect though, we still are gonna have to go with EasyCAD right at the moment for people, but also for the Pro, for the 3D boards in our Pro series, because Lightburn's not going to handle that for a while. So we're still going to have to use EasyCAD 3.
Oz said if someone would get him a machine, he'd sort it out pretty quick.
He's got one. He's got a Thunder with the 3D board in it, sitting there waiting to be debugged.
Well, there you go.
He's had it for a while.
If you send me one of them, I'll help him.
It's a totally different protocol. They've changed everything.
It's a different protocol, yeah.
Is it?
It's ridiculous.
I know it's a totally different system, but
yeah, they completely reworked it to try to keep him from debugging it, I think.
It's not EasyCAD 2.
Debug's not the right word, but that's the word I'll use. It sounds better than reverse engineering.
Needed to slap a Ruida controller in there and engineer that to work with the fiber.
Ruida's working on a fiber controller. I just don't think they have it ready yet. We were going to go with them.
Anybody know what, I think Full Spectrum, what they're using as their controller for their fiber?
It's proprietary something or another they're having made.
Yeah, everything, even their CO2 getting getting rotary to work in a Full Spectrum it's doable, but it's not easy.
It's like the Glowforge of fiber. Can I say that?
Yep. Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't come out with one yet.
A fiber? They do. Yeah. It's called the Laser Pecker.
The what?
The Laser Pecker. Have you seen that thing?
No.
Oh, dude. It's on it's on version 3.
That's the Glowforge?
No, it's not. It's not associated with Glowforge at all. But look up Laser Pecker. It's a for real thing.
Well, Glowforge actually needs to come out with a laser before they need to worry about fiber.
It's like a Galvo on like a portable tripod type.
Oh yes, I've gotten things across my Facebook about that. Yeah. That's funny looking.
Yeah, I think as low end that you want to do that, probably like the EM Smart is as simplified as you want to get, right? Once you're kind of carrying it in your pocket and whipping it out, throwing it on something, it's
right.
Probably a little bit too novelty.
I had someone confront me about a UV laser. It's portable. It's about the size of, I don't know, it's probably about 24 by 20 or whatever. It's portable, and you can like literally like set it up on a car hood or something and engrave it. And it's just, yeah, it was pretty weird. But I looked into it, and I'm like, yeah, no.
UV is really neat because UV is a fixed power output, right? It's different end of the spectrum. So it does a lot of things very well. I mean, you can do, organics, you can do metals, you can do your synthetics and stuff, all very
Yep.
well. It actually ablates glass, right, which is the only wavelength that can do it. Fiber and CO2 don't ablate it like, you can fracture it, right? You can mark it, but it doesn't actually ablate it, right? This, you can drill a perfectly clean hole through glass with it. But
Yeah.
Actually,
it
on,
does,
on that, I would love to have a little bit of help with that. I've been working on the settings on glass. Focus into it. Focus
Yeah.
deeper in. And I haven't had the same fracturing and the peeling that I
I think
normally.
you're actually defocusing, but you're just doing it the other direction.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But it's different. It's different than defocusing
It's
away.
different.
Focusing.
You
Because
talking
you're
about with
actually
CO2?
in the material instead of away from. Yeah, I get it.
But
You talking
yeah,
about with CO2, right?
yeah, CO2, and it's not
Yeah.
fracturing and it's not creating that scaling like you would normally be used to with being in focus or even being away. And
Yeah.
if that's
I
the
use
case,
Enduramark, their metal spray,
right?
because if you want it frosted, if you want it black, then obviously you can get their glass spray or whatever. But I use it, and it basically, for a lack of a better way to put it, it controls the heat a lot better, because the glass wants to absorb all that heat when it hits, and that spray kind of diffuses that heat, and it usually takes off nice even layer. I've even seen using a thin layer or a couple layers of acrylic paint on it, kind of does the same.
It's another one.
Does the same kind of thing. It diffuses that heat, so it's not directly penetrating the glass, or the glass is not absorbing it, and that would be more critical for like lead crystal. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done lead crystal glass, but that stuff's like tempered glass. If you heat it up too much in one spot, it'll just shatter.
Shatters. Yep.
Where if you use a spray on it, I've been able to make it all the way through a complete engraving, because usually I'll run it about 10 passes and I'll hit pause and I'll let the glass cool down, and then I'll do another couple of passes, I'll let it cool down, so on and so forth, to keep it from cracking. But with the spray, even with the lead crystal, I've found that you can go right through the whole thing, and I haven't had one break yet. Not to say it won't, but and it leaves a nice frosted edge. And then you can use some other stuff like the Enduramark to have a silver, I believe it is, and it leaves like a salt and pepper kind of texture to it. Not texture, but visual effect to it.
Yeah, what I found with glass, similar to what Chris had said, was taking your focus to where you're not in focus, right? I've not focused down, I've focused up a little bit. But the other thing is, that I've done was actually masking it, Jason, right? So, similar to what you're saying, you're diffusing it to where the masking. But what I found is on darker glasses, right? So if you're thinking like a dark green, like a wine bottle, or a bottle of scotch for someone, and took an old wine bottle and was playing with settings, and I could get it to mark it, but you weren't getting any of the contrast because it was dark and you'd see the dark mark. But actually putting like a it's not a masking tape, it's one of the transfer tapes. I don't know if they're the same, but like the thermal transfer tape on it, big sheets of masking tape, if you will, putting that on it and playing with it and just doing a couple of light passes, it effectively ablated the tape into the marking. Right, and I scrubbed it afterwards. It wasn't coming off, and you would get some contrast against like the dark. So done that, and then I've played with you talking about like the Enduramarks and stuff. On acrylic, you'll see some of the issues on some of your acrylic with like some of your hazing around the edge when you're cutting and stuff, because where it gets too hot and the edge kind of hazes a little bit, and used Dawn dish soap on it, and it just kind of disperses that heat a little bit, so it doesn't when you're cutting some of the acrylics, you don't get like that little bit of haze right there on the edge where it's too hot, because slowing
What
it
I
down and trying to flame polish it, you end up creating a lot more heat for a lot longer, and you finding that right balance. And I found is rubbing a little bit of dish soap on it helps to disperse the heat.
what I found with acrylic, especially clear, is if you do a light pass first, like on my 63, I'll usually run it at about 10, or I'll use about 400 at 10 percent, 10 to 12% power, and basically it kind of I guess defines the edges or gets rid of the edges,
Yeah,
and it
you
doesn't leave
effectively
doesn't.
score it first.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, you're defining that edge, and then once you do that, you do a second pass over it at whatever 15, 20, whatever you want to do,
Whatever.
and then when you go to wipe it off, it does leave that ring, but it's more of a powder or a dust. It just wipes right off. I found that to work really well. Obviously, it takes longer to do it that way because you got to do multiple passes. But like you said, it essentially scores it or gets rid of that top layer, that residue or whatever, however acrylic's made, and then it seems to not do it as much. And if it does, it usually wipes away with a little bit of. I use soap and water mixture, but it wipes away pretty easily. Or just leave the tape on there if you got a big design, or even if it's little with a lot of detail. What I'll do is I'll engrave it, and then I'll spray it with that soap and water solution, let it soak into the tape, and then take a rag and basically rub it down, and it pulls all the little detailed paper that's left in there. And then all you do is rip off the bulk, and everything's good to go.
Sorry, I was answering a ticket. I get carried away sometimes. Somebody yells squirrel. So,
Well, guys, I gotta run. We'll catch
all right.
Sound like it was a
Loading.
good thing he ran anyways.
Loading has left. We're gonna start calling Jeremy Loading, and he'll be like, "What? What are you talking about?" So, all right. Well, like I said, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to speak out, and I'll start lining up our calendar so we have some of that content we were talking about. Like I said, I did good just to get the calendar made, like I said I would. So I've got it in place now. I'll start filling it up, and hopefully we'll have some entertainment, some variety, a little bit. Not entertainment. This is not supposed to be entertaining. This is a technical webinar. Pre-sales questions about lasers, but we'll do whatever.
Yeah, I've been behaving myself lately, so the entertainment slowed down.
Hey, you've been quiet.
What time is it? Oh, it's 3:57. We almost made it. 3 more minutes. I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna kill the recording.
What's up, thing two?